Mike Anderson. I'm a retired Army colonel. Been out a while though, but the time passes very quickly. And if you're anything like me, you are glad to be back here and networking and seeing people's faces. I don't know how many folks I've run into. I can actually recognize them without the mask on. It's a wonderful thing. So appreciate you attending today. And thank you to AFCEA for putting on this super event so far. I'm enjoying it, and hopefully you are as well. I currently serve as Informatica's Chief Strategist for the public sector. That includes the Department of Defense and the colleagues sitting here to my left. So again, on behalf of Informatica, thanks to AFCEA. Thank you also to our partner, Informatica's business partner, DLT, who actually has a booth in the 2000 section here. They actually pulled together, Dr. Sherry Bennett of DLT pulled together this fantastic panel, and I owe a lot to her to doing that. I get the glory of being the moderator because Dr. Bennett had to drop out at the last minute and couldn't attend this week. So she makes me look really good by having this super panel. And so who's on our panel today? First and foremost, I think you all know the Department of the Navy Chief Information Officer, the Don CIO, Aaron Weiss, immediately to my left. Pleased to have you today, Aaron.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
To his left is Eugene Kuznetsov, Chief Technology Officer for the Naval Special Warfare Command.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Next to him, Randall Cole, Deputy Chief Data Officer for the Office of the Chief Information Office. And Duncan McCaskill. You know what? I messed that up, didn't I?
It's all good.
It's because I put you in the wrong order. Duncan's the man with the facial hair. Chief Analytics Officer in the CDO's office and the CIO. And then Randall Cole. Thank you very much. Randall serves as the Deputy Chief Data Officer for the Chief Data Officer, works for Mr. Tom Sasala, who's not here this week. So let's go ahead and jump into this, and I'll encourage you, if you've got some questions, go ahead and take notes, write them down as you hear the gentleman talk today. We do have 2 mics there. I ask you to use those mics. When we do get to the last 10, 15 minutes or so, I'll open it up for questions. Please direct them at a specific panel member or open it up to the entire panel. So let's get into it. These topic areas won't be a surprise because we had one of those great pre-calls last week. So let's talk about something going on, and the theme of what we're addressing here today is how the Navy is supporting and integrating with some of the broader efforts across the department. And first and foremost, as many of you might have noticed, there's a new Department of Defense Chief Digital and Artificial Intelligence Office. So with that as a backdrop, let's get to the first question. Gentlemen, this new office brings together the Defense Digital Service, the Joint Artificial Intelligence Center, otherwise known as the JAIC, and the DoD Chief Data Office. So, as the official announcement indicated when they launched, we can move even more aggressively and faster into this data-centric future for the department. So this is a unique combination of offices, previously separate. And here's the question: how is the Navy positioned to support this joint initiative going forward? And what are the key priorities as part of your support? Aaron, we'll start with you. Thank you.
It's a trick question, no doubt. So first of all, we're really happy to see OSD form that office, the CDAO office, because I think it'll help bring together what were previously pretty siloed focus areas within OSD. You know, the JAIC operated kind of in a different realm than the Chief Data Officer, and you had DDS kind of, you know, we love DDS, the sweatshirt wearing guys who roam the Pentagon, and they were kind of techies at large. But I think, you know, if you put them together and can wrap a vision around that, they can really help drive innovation, right? And capability will happen at the intersection of good data and a mission to solve for. And I think when you put JAIC together with the data office, they'll get that. But from our perspective, we'd like to believe that we have pretty good alignment right now at the data level between CIO and the Chief Data Officer. We're in a unified organization. And from an AI perspective, we also are driving that from within the CIO organization and doing that in partnership with some of the R&D organizations like ONR and others. And so I think we're already positioned pretty well. to be able to interface with that new CDAO office. We're looking forward to hearing what comes out of that, and importantly, how that office, I think, will then interact with JADC2, right? Because JADC2, and I know I'm totally screwing up your question lines, but JADC2 is the other kind of intersection of data and capability. So I'm looking forward to seeing that, and importantly now in the early days, they have Honorable John Sherman, who is the DoD CIO, and they're asking him to step in as the acting CDAO while the DepSecDef works out who needs to be in that leadership role. So really tight alignment for now, and we've got a close working relationship with John Sherman, and so I'm excited. We'll see where it goes, but it'll be a journey.
Exciting times, so much happening across the department now, especially with reference to data.
Yes.
And you're in the middle of it as well with what the service is doing. So Eugene, you're in a unique position, Naval Special Warfare Command. Your thoughts, maybe from where you work and from your foxhole, as we would say in the Army, about this new organization?
Well, we certainly see it as, very good news. My background is really almost entirely in the private sector and in smaller companies where you would naturally put data, AI, and people together. So to me, it's, well, why wasn't it that way to begin with, right? And I think there's many details that are still waiting for guidance and implementation, but I think the general idea of consolidating in that way is something that's going to accelerate the AI journey for everyone. I think the other piece for, other commands and being located here in San Diego rather than in the Pentagon is very often looking at these patterns and these changes at the OSD level is very helpful to then executing locally and saying, well, look, we can start taking some of this guidance and implementing it inside our own organization without waiting for all of it to be kind of resolved and to trickle down. So it has been very helpful, along with other guidance from the Office of the Deputy Secretary of Defense around data and AI acceleration.
Thank you, great insight. Duncan.
So I think that, and hot off the presses, we got confirmation from our DoD CDO, Mr. David Spirk, that the Advana program will also be included in the new CDAO office, which is great for us. Our data environment within the Don Jupiter is a tenant of Advana. But to the question of our thoughts on the office, to what Aaron said, we were already operating that way. We've co-located data and analytics and AI and technology in the same organization, and we have been very purposeful about not trying to follow the shiny thing and, to quote some of my colleagues, not putting the machine learning or artificial intelligence shiny object in front of the data cart, but allowing those who are working mission sets and have questions that are answerable by data that is clean enough and good enough to support some type of model or advanced analysis, to let them run with scissors and do it, and then try to remedially get the rest of the enterprise up to the same level of data accuracy, data viability, et cetera.
Absolutely, and Randall, your unique position, you're serving right under the Chief Data Officer. Your thoughts, you're in the thick of this as well.
Yeah, so from my perspective, there was really one major adjustment that was coming with the new office, and that was bringing the JAIC closer to connections with the Chief Data Officer and some of the work in the CIO. I would often see most of the folks that are going to comprise the CDAO at the DoD level in our meetings. A lot of discussion, collaboration. Probably again, the JAIC from my perspective was the big add. As Duncan had mentioned, the Advana platform being there and being the foundation for Jupiter, again, was just a part and parcel of the work that we currently have underway. So.
Glad you mentioned Jupiter. We have a chance to talk about that a little bit more later, and of course, Aaron, I failed to mention JADC2 will be a topic area too, but it's okay. This all kind of connects to each other. All right. So last year, DoD launched the AI and Data Accelerator initiative. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, this is essentially designed to accelerate combatant command adoption of improved data management and the utilization of AI capabilities. Given the Navy's service role to support the warfighters through your service component commands, how is the Navy leveraging that initiative as it progresses across the department? Aaron, we'll just go ahead and keep going right to left here.
Sure. Yeah, I think the ADA or the ADA, as it is focused, and it was created by the Deputy Secretary Hicks to focus on the combatant commands. And I think as a service, we look for the combatant commands to form a bit of the demand signal, right? When we say, what is it that we need to man, train, and equip and prepare for? So I think there's a healthy relationship there. So to the extent that ADA can work with the combatant commands to kind of bubble to the top the critical mission sets that they need to solve through data and AI, that only helps to further focus our efforts, from a service perspective. So I welcome it. It'll be interesting kind of to circle back to the first question of how will ADA also come back and integrate with this new office, CDAO. I think there's kind of an assumption that it will get folded into it, but at any rate, I think it's all good movement and in the right direction.
I'm sure most in the audience couldn't agree with you as well, any more than the progress and pushing the needle for advancing, managing data better in an improved way across the services. And all this is going to help the services, I think, not just the Navy, but the Army, Marine Corps, Space Force, et cetera. So I completely agree with you there. Eugene, unique perspective again from how you see this from your command and what's going on and how you can leverage this from the joint perspective.
Yeah, so it's interesting for us because, of course, we both have Special Operations Command and the Navy and the interactions there. And I think it's a very good initiative because what it does is it improves communication and it makes it easier to have high bandwidth technical conversations across the combatant commands, across the services, and that's really what we need, right? Because everybody has talent and everybody has advanced technology. It's not evenly distributed, and sometimes it's hard for people to find out who to talk to. So this idea of sending smaller teams out and building those other connections about data and AI is going to be very helpful.
Fantastic. Duncan.
I'll give you a brief anecdote, and I won't go into detail for obvious reasons, but we loved the ADA effort so much that we actually sent one of our contractor data engineers out to Stuttgart to help some personnel at UCOM work through a use case. And it was very instructive to us because there is data that we generate within the Department of the Navy and our man, train, and equip function that is used by a command to complete their warfighting function. So by working through that use case, we kind of understood, all right, they understand maybe 90% of why this data is the way that it is, but there's this kind of margin where we need to do a better job of defining that data better, making sure that we have the appropriate fields and those fields have consistent values. The end result after about a 3-month effort was that we learned a lot ourselves. We provided some pretty significant assistance to European Command on a use case for their operations, and now we're able to better go back to our originating systems and say when this type of data leaves your DMARC, this is how it is being used and the things that you need to be concerned about. So when you're putting in location data, you really need to make sure that that location data is of the appropriate type, it has the appropriate values, controlled values, et cetera. And it was extremely meaningful and helpful for us, and I look forward to doing that with additional commands as funding and ability allows.
Yeah, sure. UCOM's a great place to start, and I think you'd all agree at this table, just from a professional standpoint, these commands need to know the data they have, number one. They need to be able to discover it, right? Where is all that data hidden? Where are the sources? And it's a plethora of sensors out there, right? Real-time information. It's also databases. It's on-prem. They're putting stuff in the cloud. They're creating new data every day. They've got to know, number one, hey, where is all that data so I can start getting my arms around it. So then I can find it. I can do a semantic search, right? I can make sure it's governed correctly and the workflow is the way I want it to be in accordance with my policies, et cetera. Some commands are more mature than others, right? And so this reach out, I think, to UCOM is a way to bring them online with what's going on department-wide. So thanks.
You wouldn't happen to know of any tools that do those types of things, do you?
I'd be glad to talk with you immediately.
Excellent.
So Randall, We'll start with, we'll go to you, and I'm going to start with you on the next question because it really goes to the heart of some of what the CDO is doing, but I'll go ahead and let you finish up here with your thought.
Sure. I think I'll circle back to a couple of points that Aaron made in terms of projects bubbling up to the top, and we're already starting to see that. We're getting requests for, hey, who do I submit my projects to? How do they funnel into the ADA? So we do anticipate additional projects coming forward. Some things, again, services are already working in relation to events and exercises, AI incorporation there. But I'd also like to say that I think this is an opportunity for us because I believe the ADA is going to stretch our platform capabilities, push some of the things to the limit. Some things we will recognize that we need to improve on to support the warfighter in the areas of data, AI, and data management. So I think there's going to be a lot of learning that happens through this exercise, and be good.
Thanks, Randall. And so, Randall, we're going to stay with you here because I think this really gets to the heart of some of what the CDO's office is doing, both you and Duncan. So, can the Navy today create repeatable, testable, and trusted data workflows from the tactical edge all the way up to the strategic and the executive level, primarily for decision-making activities? What are the biggest challenges to achieving this desired end state with reference to, let's throw in the joint force there. I know you're doing it for the Navy, but as well it ties into our topic here today. So your thoughts. I'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm going to actually take part of this question and really work it from the business side, which is preponderance of what we work with in the Pentagon, I think, on a day-to-day basis. As we've developed our data platform, Jupiter, again, Tenet and Advana, and part of benefit of what the DoD has stood up in terms of services, we are beginning to develop workflows and data pipelines from the point of collection all the way up through the senior leadership dashboards. So a number of data sources have already been ingested. We are working on various stages of whether you're doing a data load manually or some automated data input through API or other forms. We have worked that out for dozens of data sources and are continuing to build on that number. We have well over 1,000 total data sources for the Department of Navy, not really including applications or other data integration sources. So there's a long way to go in certain areas. However, I also think that as part of this work, we're starting to see key data rise to the top. Those things that most folks are asking for, we're starting there, building those workflows and those data pipelines for that priority data to satisfy both DMAG and the DoD level demand, but also use cases within the Department of Navy. I'm going to stop my answer there and not try to go to the tactical edge, sure. and I'm going to hope and defer over to Duncan or other of my colleagues to talk a little bit more about tactical edge.
Go ahead and pick it up, Duncan, all yours.
So I'd answer that question a couple of ways. First, we've already proven that we can do it. The question is, can we do it at speed and at scale and in near real time? And that's where I think we have the biggest issues. For an example, we have been working on data enabling the CNO's daily summary, mission and intel ops summary. That's been a pretty successful effort from pilots on the unclassified fabric all the way up through working on the various classified nets. But that has some pretty well-defined data sources, well-defined stewards, or shall I say, functional data managers to access that data, and we've built those flows from API access types through static ingests. But to get to the real tactical edge, that's when we get into bandwidth for communications, types of data on platforms. Do we have the connectivity from tactical edge at a robust enough level to get a data object in a time frame that is relevant to the speed of some type of decision? Is it even appropriate to have a data object come back to a central, if you will, type of data environment to make a decision? And I think that the key to being able to truly work at speed and at scale in near real time is going to be federation, so that we acknowledge that, and this probably goes to a question you'll have later, something like a Jupiter is for the care and feeding of mission, for the monitoring of mission. It's an analytics harness around what we do in our day-to-day jobs, but you're not going to put, Jupiter on a cruise missile. I mean, that's just not, it's not an appropriate use of technology. So I think we have some challenges there, but we've proven that we can do it. I think the main question is working with mission partners, such as Eugene and commands, is what's appropriate, and what is mission informed and what is mission relevant.
Great comments, thank you. Eugene, SOCOM's done a ton in this arena, especially at the tactical level. Your thoughts?
I think others have covered it well. The future is here, it's just not evenly distributed. So I think in some areas it's amazing the capabilities that exist today and are used by the warfighters. I think in other areas we have to take those best practices and just spread them around, if you will. I think the other technical thing that's very important is that it's not just about data at the tactical edge. Is do you have a mature DevSecOps pipeline that you can actually deploy software quickly and securely out to the edge? It's not all about data. Of course, there's been a lot of work being done in that area as well. So we get the code part right along with the data part.
Aaron, back up to the strategic level with this question. You're a decision maker, you're an influencer, and you see much of this from the descriptive level of analytics. Then there's the diagnostics, predictive and prescriptive as well. You're seeing a lot of those dashboards, et cetera. Your thoughts on that question and how it looks from your viewpoint?
Yeah, I think the topic of data to enable the tactical edge is a really great topic, and it is very different from the data enablement that we talk about on kind of the enterprise end, right? Where we have a Jupiter, and we can mass data and we can assemble it and derive insights. It's a different kind of use of data when we think about it from a tactical edge perspective, and there's kind of two flavors of it that I think about. One is sort of from a C4I perspective. We are seeing, and I had an opportunity, just yesterday, to spend time over at Naval and engage with the PMWs at C4I. And they are creating amazing tools for the tactical edge tools, which are ingesting massive amounts of data and using that to speed insights, develop COAs, derive options for commanding officers in the field. And so that is sort of mass data, but done from a tactical edge perspective. And so again, it's less about data warehousing, more about data integration and massing. And then the second kind of flavor of that I think about from a tactical edge data perspective is the ability to pass data in discrete pieces in knowable ways. And that gets to the heart of integrated long-range fires, right? At the end of the day, your ability to pass a track or a target is at its essence your ability to track a piece of data across a tactical network and have it be ingestible and usable and understandable by the shooter. We talk sensor shooter, we talk JADC2. That, at the end of the day, is a data problem, and it is about moving data tracks in a knowable way. And if I kind of step it up to the CEO kind of site picture, I often talk about that the CIO has, I have a golden requirement. You talk about the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. As a CIO, there's a golden requirement, and you can kind of boil everything down to one golden requirement, and it is to be able to securely move any information from anywhere to anywhere. That's it. I mean, you could do that, you could be a CIO. And I wish I could say that we could do that pervasively, but we are working on that. And so all these things that we're talking about, so tactical edge use cases, or data massing for tactical use, or passing track data, or gaining insights, at the enterprise level, it in essence comes down to satisfying that golden requirement. And so we're all kind of touching at that use case from different perspectives.
I love it, golden requirement. However, I'll leave that to you. Even though it sounds simple, I know it's not, especially in an organization as large as the Navy. So thank you for all those thoughts. And we're touching here when we talk about that tactical to operational to strategic level of that data and how it's being used. And that rolls well into the next topic area, which has probably been discussed quite a bit here already today on the first day of the conference, and that's the Joint All-Domain Command and Control System. The goal, if you're not familiar with it, of the Joint All-Domain Command and Control System, or JADC2, is to have a fully connected battlefield that links weapon systems, command centers, and sensor data into integrated force design, very heavily on the tactical edge that we're talking about here. The effort responds to the need for fast, timely joint decision-making by the sharing of data, which, of course, needs to be accessible, trusted, and protected. So arguably, gentlemen, JADC2 as framed out as a key enabler on the future battlefield is essential. Each of you on this panel will eventually be touched by JADC2 as it matures if you haven't already. I'm betting it has already touched you. What do you see as the challenges to success within your lanes of responsibility with JADC2, and what are your concerns? Aaron, we'll start back at you on the right side.
Yeah, JADC2 is absolutely here. You know, the Navy's play in the JADC2 arena is Project Overmatch. You've probably heard of it, and it is essentially the JADC2 mission set for the naval forces. Again, at the end of the day, they're solving first for transport, so the ability to securely move. And then once you can do that, then you can talk about what kind of information do you want to move. And I will tell you, they're doing it. Overmatch is doing real stuff. They're not doing PowerPoint Ranger stuff. They're showing immense leaps of capability. This stuff is already finding its way out into the fleet. And in fact, just through grassroots effort, it's percolating into other services. I know the Air Force is engaged now in collaboration with Overmatch. So JADC2 is a thing. Overmatch is really a thing, and I think Department of Navy is really a leader in this space. Driven largely from NAVWAR and what Rear Admiral Small is doing over there. He's got the right technical mindset to this. We'll get to a point where Overmatch has enabled those pathways for the securely move part, and they're doing that, mindful of the tactical realities of, operating in that denied, degraded, intermittent, latent state of tactical network capability. And we are going to get to the point where the focus likely starts to shift much more over to the data itself as the thing that you're moving, and your ability to provide consistency, descriptors, to be able to find the data that you need, to be able to pass it, and that will be the healthy next step. I know that we're getting there, and I know that Duncan and Randall and others are engaged with that. We are also engaged with JADC2 at the OSD level, where they are very much focused on the data problem, right? Talking about data interchange. So these kind of trajectories will intersect, the ability to securely move at the tactical edge and have that interoperability, and it will intersect with kind of the data problem as it's evolving.
Thank you. Eugene, your thoughts?
So agree with all of those comments. I think very well said. Moving on to that next phase beyond connectivity is going to be very exciting, for me, because we have a lot of very good best practices for interoperable data, or how I like to talk about it, interoperable APIs, application programming interfaces, which is really about these real-time calls between different pieces of software and hardware communicating on an open network. In Silicon Valley, people talk about the API economy, where when you start a company, you very often don't build most of the things that the company does. You simply call other people's APIs for particular services, to go provision a phone number, to send a text message, to send an email that maybe is a marketing email, to log in a user. And that's really going to be the next phase of Overmatch and JADC2. It is about data interoperability, but it's more real time, and it's more machine readable and machine driven. So it's going to be exciting to see that move from kind of the innovation economy into the areas for closing the kill chain.
Thanks. Go ahead, Duncan.
I think the running theme here is excitement. We we on the data and analytics side within Don CIO, I would say are somewhat joined at the hip with the data leads for Overmatch, and precisely the conversations that we are having are what is the connective tissue, what are the APIs that we need in place, because it's not just a collect from a sensor and feed up to the enterprise type of problem. It's, all right, you are in an AOR and you need data that you don't currently have. How do we get you that data as quickly and efficiently as possible? So it's a bidirectional interface, and won't get into too many details, obviously, but it is an exciting time to be doing this work, because it's everything that we've said is possible, that we know that we need to do, and now we're actually doing it. So it's pretty fun.
That's fantastic. So for Randall, obviously you're very aware of JADC2. Project Overmatch has already been mentioned here several times. It's an ongoing effort, understood. Your role in that, your thoughts about JADC2 in general, but also the Navy's portion of it, Project Overmatch.
Yeah, I'll actually take this a bit more from the governance side and say that having sat in a number of meetings over the last year and a half to 2 years, it is clear that there's a tremendous amount of great effort that's going on in services, other MILDEPs. It shows up all the time at the cross-functional teams at the executive level meetings. And I think one of the challenges is being able to provide some level of agile governance that can take advantage of all those, bring them in, and unstovepipe them, if I can say that. And one of the things that we're doing, I believe, within the Department of Navy that's going to continue to be important is to understand the commonalities in the architecture we need to support to the tactical edge versus, as Aaron has noted, back up toward the Pentagon at the enterprise level decision making. There are some common services, commonalities there that are going to be key, and understanding those as part of that data services mesh is going to be an essential part of how we move forward. Within the Navy, I believe we're doing that effectively, or beginning to do that effectively. It'll be interesting to see how that translates across the MILDEPs.
Yeah, so the first thing that's coming to my mind here, as I've heard you all for the first 20, 30 minutes or so, is you don't have much on your plate at all at this table, right? And not much to do. You're probably pretty bored these days in the building and otherwise. So I think speaking for everybody here, we do appreciate the fantastic work you're doing every day for the Navy and the department as well. So if I forget to mention that later, wanted to get it out there now. So Duncan, if I can, I'm going to start with you on this question. It should sound familiar though. So there's been much ado about the 2021 Department of Defense data strategy that David Spurk's office put out, and we've mentioned him already. Subsequently, there were 2 other memorandums that went out from, one of them from Kathleen Hicks's office and the Office of Secretary of Defense, the DoD-wide Creating Data Advantage Memorandum, and the Data Decrees, most recent one, the Data Decrees Memorandum. With the publishing of the DoD data strategy, the Navy announced it was following with an implementation plan with 5 lines of effort. Just so everyone's on the same sheet of music. Line of effort 1 is building the foundation. Line of effort 2 is evolving the workforce. Line of effort 3 is positioning and protecting data. Line of effort 4 is building, optimizing, operationalizing, and rationalizing the environment. And then the final line of effort, number 5, is managing and governing the environment. So Duncan, starting with you, where has the Navy achieved the most success, and what's been the most challenging hurdles around this implementation effort?
You're not pulling any punches there on the size, scope, and complexity of that question. So I'll start answering by saying it's interesting to me that I said earlier there are things that we know that we need to do, and sometimes we have trouble getting started. And I think that the 2 memoranda that came from Secretary Hicks were kind of precisely the kick in the pants that we needed. And the sheets of paper, the doctrine that allowed us to say, no, really, we're serious about doing these things. We're serious about actually bringing data to bear when we need to make a decision. So that was refreshing. Former Secretary Harker released a similar memo within the Don, reiterating those points and having some thou shalt statements as well. But as far as our lines of effort, I think where we have the most opportunity, I think, is with our workforce. It is fantastic that we now have OPM approved 1560 job category to hire data scientists within are within the Department of the Navy. We've canvassed the department. We have a much better sense than we did a couple of years ago about the level of data talent that we have. And it's not uniformly dispersed across the department, but we do have some pockets of people who really know what they're doing and can get hands on keyboard and make some great things happen. As far as where we have had the most success, I'm biased, obviously. I'm our program owner for Jupiter, our enterprise data environment. Being able to sign on with an accredited solution and move out very quickly and start bringing data to decisions, not only internally for the Don, but to feed the data requirements, to feed that data demand from DevSecDev, has been fantastic. So we've done a lot of great work there.
Thanks, Duncan. Randall, I'm going to skip over to you since this is right up your lane as well, and then Eugene will come back to you, and then Aaron.
Yeah, I'll keep this very short because I could speak all day on this. This is basically my life. And I will say that I agree with everything Duncan said. We have made progress on the data platform side. As painful as it is, I think we've made consistent, steady progress on the governance side. We have a board of executives, GOFO, SES level, that are really looking at our data from an information domain perspective and trying to look at data that needs to be integrated across your traditional, maybe considered stovepipes of financial, HR, you go down the list, installations data. We're trying to take a different approach and, again, drive governance that is cross-functional. And I think we've been successful there. And also, as some policy has rolled out over the last several months from the Office of the CIO, specifically enterprise IT services that are going to be foundational for realizing what we're looking for in the data space. I see that as a great win as we're planning and moving forward in those areas.
Eugene?
I agree. I think all of this guidance has been very important and very helpful. One of the great things about it is that it's something that smaller commands can actually take advantage of immediately and sort of start acting locally even while they wait for the enterprise-wide solutions. The Creating Data Advantage memo especially really focuses with the 5 data decrees on first flipping the default to saying that data is an enterprise DoD asset and that this is not something that should be kind of held back, but instead a bias towards sharing it and opening it up. The idea of putting all the data into a data catalog so that it can be found, these data assets can be found by other services and within a service. And then some of the other points about interoperability and really making it available using open, preferably open source APIs and data interfaces. That's critically important because that really allows the practitioners on the ground to shift the way that business is done and conducted, in addition to the implementation plans and other strategies. So all of that has been very, very helpful.
Great points, all three of you. Governance is really the core of a data program, right? Platform enables it, but cataloging as well and making sure the data is quality and you can trust it. Mm-hmm. So your decision makers are making the best decisions they can based on experiential background, but also combining that with data can be a tremendous impact across the board, and I know you're all working towards that. Aaron, final thoughts on that topic?
Yeah, I'm not going to pretend to be the expert that Duncan and Randall are. These guys live, breathe, and eat data every day. But what I look at is the uptake, the outcomes, and I see it happening. Whether it's the Secretary of the Navy, putting out expectations that we will derive insights and leverage the Jupiter Advana platform that these guys have created. That's happening, and that's being used extensively. Or looking at as the Navy implements the CNO's NAV plan, and that's the NAV plan implementation framework, or the NIF colloquially. The Vice Chief of Naval Operations is driving the NIF, and he especially is a person who gets it. If you know Admiral Lesher, one of the smartest guys that I've met in the Navy, and he has embraced that fundamental approach, that uptake in data, and every one of those 18 NIF objectives has a data element, and he holds those teams accountable to drive to detailed levels of data. Duncan and Randall and teams work with the VCNO's teams to help them source the data at an extremely detailed level. So this is not, hand waving. This is true use of data. And so, from my perspective, there's uptake. It's real, and people are driving outcomes with it. So this is the good stuff.
Thanks, Aaron. I'm going to mix it up a little bit, skip to another topic area, and this will be the last one. So get your questions ready. So we have a few minutes at the end, and we'll keep the responses to this question short so we can get that Q&A done. And if I did fail to mention earlier, Duncan has an overlap time with the Don IT conference upstairs. He may have to step out in the last 5 minutes, so we won't hold that against you, Duncan, as you head out. So if you've got a question for Duncan when we go to it, hit him up first. So there's been some pretty neat special initiatives in the Navy with some really neat names, okay? One of them's Operation Cattle Drive. So this has been the other one's Supernova, which I like as well. But Cattle Drive has been a major modernization effort, driving Navy commands to retire legacy systems, really resulting from removing system ATOs, right? And then that requires a corresponding funding elimination as well. You don't have an ATO, can't keep the software or the product or whatever on the Navy system. Last year it was focused on Navy financial services. Moving into FY22, you've said that the focus is on logistics IT systems. So maintaining a focus on data on this panel, how is the Navy ensuring the data from legacy systems is migrated, integrated, and curated to new environments as this modernization occurs? And I'm going to throw that out. Who wants to take that one on?
Not at all.
Or I'll let Aaron pick.
You pick, boss.
I mean, Cattle Drive is just what you said. It was an idea born of, we're really good at creating new capability. We're not very good at retiring the old. And so we needed to drive those old things into oblivion. And, if you know the story of a cattle drive, it doesn't end well for cattle at the end of the cattle drive. And so that's where the name came from. We also had an undersecretary of the Navy at the time who was from Oklahoma, so he latched onto that. He was all in. So whatever it takes, right? But I think, you articulate one of the problems of cattle drive, which is, you can drive the system out, but have you captured, have you archived, the legacy data from that system? I'm going to leave that hard stuff to Duncan and Randall and Tom and the team. I know they're working that. I guess the other part of it is Supernova. So Supernova is a flavor of Cattle Drive, and that is, as these guys go out to create all this capability, it's turning off and consolidating kind of competing silos of data analysis, databases, data warehouses. Go find them, suck them into the Jupyter ecosystem and shut it down, recoup the costs, reinvest those costs. So this is also stuff that the data team is driving.
So I'll say we had, at some point in time, over 50 data environments of various types in the Department of the Navy, and there was some just patent overlap, and then in other cases, legitimate mission reasons why we had those other environments. And that's kind of that was the initial anecdotal kind of analysis. But Supernova, I think, initially started as we're going to target it, and if you don't need to exist, then you will not exist. I'll defer to Randall on some of the benefits that we didn't necessarily expect that we were going to get out of the analysis and out of the work. It really led to some good conversation on data types and data environments having different definitions of and different representations of similar type of data. On the ensuring that we don't have any type of data or knowledge loss, it's still an issue that we are working through. We have not necessarily cut anything off on the data side yet, but what we don't want to have happen, and also another anecdote, there's data that goes back well over 50 years that is in the hands of various members of the Defense Industrial Base, FFRDCs, that we are working to ingress that data back into the Department of the Navy, because we, in years past, did not have the foresight to try to solve the problem. How do we not lose track of our data? And that involves some, legal indemnification. Some of it existed before the Privacy Act. I guess that's 50, 60 years now. That's some hard work. It's some policy work. It's not necessarily technical work. The technical side is easy. Okay, you have it. We know what your database is. We know what the schema is. You may have given data or reported data over to another system. We can take it from there because that one will still exist. I mean, that's kind of the nuance. But the hard part is, how are we going to solve some of the policies? If we have something that was once a program of record, how do we retain that data and stay within the bounds of the law?
Yeah, I'll try to be really quick here. I think one of the key connections that we're working to make in partnership with other parts of the Secretariat is to connect with the business process and understanding of how the actual systems were put in place, what they were intended to do, understanding why the data is important. Maybe the process is not good. Maybe it's not needed anymore. For those systems, it's going to be much easier to be able to retire and move on. We all know, I believe, that there are lots of data that travel from system to system. We start with what may be a good data set, but then eventually as it travels system to system, it may be degraded. There's a lot of that we anticipate over the enterprise. And so some of those will be easy kills. I think those are going to be what we have to hit first to be able to build some momentum for some of the tougher ones where you have 3 or 4 systems that claim to be the authoritative source for one specific data element, for example. Those will be more challenging. But those working together again with our partners is one way we're addressing it.
Absolutely, and we'll finish up this question and move to Q&A from the audience with Eugene, because you're one of those commands. Have you been one of those cows at the end of the cattle drive and you've lost the system and you've lost your ATO and lost your funding? And that's okay if you don't want to answer that, but maybe just talk generally about
I think
the
I'll make a
process.
general comment about data, right? That this is why having this idea of open APIs and all of the data being in a DoD enterprise resource that enables things like cattle drive. That means you can get the data out and don't have this lock-in of both the software and maybe, in some cases, legacy systems staying alive just because they won't let the data come back into the department. So I think that's why those other policies are critical.
Super, thanks. Great answers from the panel today. I hope you've got some questions ready to go. There are 2 mics that should be on, ready to take your questions. You can direct them at a specific panel member or throw it out to the whole group. As a reminder, Duncan needs to run upstairs here in a minute, so if you've got a question for him, hit Duncan up first so he can get out of here. Yes, sir, we'll go ahead to you. Thank you.
Hey, good afternoon. Anthony McKinney from Cisco. I'll point the first question to Mr. Kuznetsov. You talked about APIs and some of the different software, DevOps type of solutions. How much are you investing in not just the data analysts, but also the people that are familiar with the DevSecOps methodologies to be able to smooth out some of those interactions between the software and the applications and the data?
I want to be careful in getting too precise with an answer of how much we're investing in different programs or areas, but there's definitely a focus on that kind of talent. We mentioned the Defense Digital Service earlier. They certainly do a lot of that kind of work, as does the JAKE and some of the other organizations I previously mentioned. So I think there's a recognition that all of those types of subspecialties of software are important.
Thank you, gentlemen. Looks like we got another one coming.
Hi, can any of you comment on how policy or attribute-based access controls are going to figure into these modernization efforts?
I'll give you a perspective on that. I mean, attribute-based access controls, parameter-based access is one of the foundational elements of Zero Trust, right? And at its core, Zero Trust is the intersection of identity and data. And that data might be a capability or it might be a data element. And so what you're getting at is attribute-based access is kind of fundamental to the zero trust movement, and it is happening. So as we are deploying new capability, that is being done. For example, the Navy's flank speed environment is based on zero trust principles in terms of that authentication. We'll see much more of that to come, but it will get to, can we adequately describe data in a way, describing the data itself so that we can decide who has access to what.
Good governance topic. Yes, sir.
Yes, my question's for Mr. Cole and Mr. Catskill. You talked about multiple data pipelines. Dozens of them have been, I guess, rectified, and you have another 1,000 or so on your list, it sounded like. What issues and level of cleanliness and completeness are you finding in the data, and how are you addressing areas where it might be deficient?
I will say it has been all over the map. We have encountered, so we start off with a question. We don't just go out and indiscriminately say, oh, you have data, that would be nice to have in the platform, we're going to ingest it. In the future, when we have a robust, I'll say, microservice mesh, even though that's a technical implementation that we have not decided on. I am fond of them. Those are my opinions. That does not represent the Department of the Navy. But once we get to the point where we have those APIs and we can pull data at speed in near real time, it's going to be a lot easier than what we're doing today, which is we need to meet this critical need for a question coming out of SecNav's office. All right, now, what data might be responsive to that particular question? What are the data elements that would feed it? All right, that data is housed in this N number of systems. Now we got to go out and get it. So the biggest hurdles are the feeling on those who have operated these systems that they are the owners of the data in that system. Foot stomp, there is only one owner of data in the Department of the Navy, and that is the Secretary of the Navy. Everyone else is a functional manager for that data or a data steward. That's in Secretary Harker's memo. Thou shalt not impede access or providing data for decision making to the Jupiter Enterprise data environment. So we still have those types of, well, okay, you don't necessarily get to say no, you get to say yes with conditions. What's security classification guide behind that data? Is there any statute governing it? What are the rules around its use? If I join it with another type of data, am I breaking a law? Am I breaking classification? Or having it need to rise to a higher network fabric? Those are not technical issues. The technical issues we face are on the API side. All right, do you have an open API? How do we hit it? Okay, great, we're good to go. Let's see what we get. Those obviously tend to be the cleaner, better sets of data, better data objects. When we're having to do a static ingest of a file or run it through a secure FTP, that's when we get into like, okay, we have, anecdotally, we have 5 different ways of someone writing Washington, D.C. And so we have another system that has one way, or maybe we have one that does lat long and one has UTM and one has MGRS. So now we have additional work to try to do some type of correlation across those different types. We'll do that. Ideally, we don't want to have to do that hands-on keyboard ourselves in Jupyter or wherever we're working. We want to take that and go to whatever those downstream systems are and levy some type of requirement and say, when you're doing location, now this is the standard, agreed upon standard for how we are going to represent location. If you need to deviate from that standard, when you egress data, there must be this transform so we have some type of unified definition of what location data looks like. Same thing for people data, same things for financial data. So it's both more difficult than we think and less difficult, and the difficulty is really on the policy side, not the technical side. And also, how willing are those who operate systems and build systems, new or legacy, how willing are they to accept the requirement without Mr. Sasela, Randall, and myself having to go to our boss, Mr. Weiss, and say, hey, can we get a little bit of help? Because we're having an issue with this system. And we don't like to do that. We don't want to bring Aaron problems. We want to bring him solutions.
Aaron agrees vehemently with what you just said.
Thank you all. I got to do a session upstairs.
Thank you.
Great panel.
And, okay, we've got time for, hopefully it's not for Duncan. We've got
No.
2 more minutes left. You, sir, go ahead.
Mr. Weiss, in the data decrees, there was discussion about the chief data officer being in charge of data security. I'm just kind of curious how it's working with the chief data officer being in charge of security, along with the CISO, and how that seam space is going.
Yeah, this is it's a good question. This is another one where I would say we're likely ahead of the curve because we've got those things in a unified organization, right? So our CISO and our chief data officers sit literally next to each other. You know, they are collaborating on those questions. They each have a role to play, and I'm looking for both of those gentlemen to apply their expertise in there. I couldn't tell you where the bright line exists between those right now, but it is critical that they're able to do that collaboratively.
Good?
We have time for more?
Sure. My watch is a little fast. I'm actually like 3 minutes fast. So last one. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. First, thank you so much, you all. I agree. The amount of work from working at BUMED at the Pentagon back in the 2000s, I appreciate all that you are doing because it was very, very painful back then. But question, so do you believe that you have all the data needed to actually help leaders make the right decisions? In other words, you're talking a lot about, 1,000 data pieces. Do we think that the Navy and Marine Corps leadership has all the right data sets to make that decisions, even though they may be in those 1,000 data silos? But when we think about operational data, financial data, your experiential data, in other words, what is the warfighter thinking? What are they believing? What are they seeing, the needs? Do we have the ability to actually, right now, to actually harness that insights directly, experiential insights directly from our warfighters at the edge as well?
You want me to start? So I'll start, and then obviously others can chime in. But I think the short answer is no, and I'll caveat that by saying that as we go through trying to answer key questions on a regular basis, we often find that data are either poorly collected or not collected out of certain processes. I think, again, I'm going to speak mostly from the business side here, but I think that's a common understanding from those that have been in the Pentagon. We don't, in all cases, have the data we need, or if we do, it's not at the quality that we need, or timeliness, or some other facet. And so I think that is an ongoing challenge. Again, gets back to a statement earlier to work with the process owners. I think work with the analysts and the other SMEs as they understand the needs for the data so that we can, again, either adjust the process or clean up the data as necessary to help. Over.
Randall, thank you. We are ending our time here today. I could keep going on, but I know you gentlemen are talking all day long and involved in a lot of things, so time to cut it off and give you a little bit of break here. So Randall, thank you. Eugene, Aaron, thank you for joining today. And again, thanks for AFCEA for hosting today. I think this is a great topic. Hopefully it spurred some thoughts, and I wish you all well and enjoy the rest of the conference. On behalf of Informatica, our partner DLT and AFCEA, enjoy the rest of your day.